I didn't expect my summer to turn into a full-blown war with the HOA, but this story begins with a moment that still shocks me every time I think about it. Picture this. I'm standing at the community pool on a scorching Saturday afternoon, towel over my shoulder, sunscreen in hand, ready to finally relax after a brutal week. But before I can even take a step toward the water, a shrill voice cuts through the air. "You are not allowed in here anymore." I turn around and there she is, Karen, HOA board member, self-appointed neighborhood sheriff, and the last person anyone wants to meet before coffee. She's standing with her arms crossed, visor tilted like she's running a military base instead of a suburban pool. At first, I think she's joking. Maybe she's having one of her dramatic days. But then she waves a clipboard at me like it's a weapon. "Your pool privileges," she announces loudly enough for the entire neighborhood to hear, "have been suspended indefinitely." I wish I could say this came out of nowhere, but it didn't for weeks. Karen had been nitpicking everything I did, my trash bins, my lawn height, even the color of my welcome mat. But banning me from the pool? That was a new level of petty. And when I asked her why, she simply smirked and said, "Because I can." That's when something in me snapped. I knew right then that if Karen wanted a battle, she'd just declared it. And she had no idea she was picking a fight with someone who wasn't afraid to push back. But the real twist? She had no clue that the HOA had overlooked something huge, something that would give me leverage she couldn't even imagine. Something that would flip the entire situation upside down. Because if Karen wanted me out of the pool, fine. But she wasn't going to like what happened when I took the pool with me. This is the story of how one petty power trip turned into a showdown nobody in the neighborhood will ever forget, and how I ended up controlling the one thing Karen cared about most, the water itself. Before any of that unfolded, I stood there staring at Karen, feeling every pair of eyes at the pool glued to us. Parents paused mid-conversation. Kids stopped splashing. Even the lifeguard leaned forward like this was the highlight of his shift. In that tense moment, I realized Karen wasn't just trying to embarrass me. She wanted the whole neighborhood to see what happened when someone didn't bow to her imaginary authority. And the moment Karen banned me from the pool, I went home furious. I paced my living room like a detective trying to solve a murder case. Every time I replayed her smug face in my mind, it made my blood boil even more. But anger has a funny way of pushing you toward clarity, and within an hour I had a plan forming. First step, I pulled out the HOA bylaws. Anyone who's ever lived under an HOA knows that reading those documents is like voluntarily swallowing broken glass. But I refused to let Karen win just because she hid behind a clipboard. I flipped through page after page until something caught my eye, something so bizarre that I read it twice just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. There it was. The community pool's water pump wasn't owned by the HOA. It was privately owned, and the owner was allowed to sell it at any time. I blinked, reread it, blinked again. Apparently, when the neighborhood was first built, the developers outsourced the pump installation to a third-party contractor who retained ownership unless the HOA bought it out. But the HOA never did. They just forgot. And that contractor? He was still listed as the legal owner. A wild idea hit me like a lightning bolt. I grabbed my laptop, searched the contractor's business, and to my shock, they were still operating. Within minutes, I found a phone number and called. "Yeah, that old pool pump?" The owner said after I explained everything, "It's still ours. Honestly, we've been thinking of selling it off. Thing's more trouble than it's worth. You want it?" I almost dropped my phone. Did I want it? I wanted it so badly I could already hear Karen screeching from across the neighborhood. We met the next morning. The pump wasn't some tiny little gadget. It was an industrial-grade beast sitting behind the pool maintenance gate, quietly humming like it powered half the town. And the price? Let's just say it was surprisingly affordable, especially for the level of chaos it promised. I signed the paperwork, transferred the money, and just like that, I became the legal owner of the community pool's only water pump. It felt unreal, like I had just acquired the HOA's beating heart. All those rules, fines, and bans Karen loved throwing around, they all relied on the one thing I now possessed, the ability to keep the pool running. That's when the revenge stopped being an idea and became a promise. Karen banned me from the pool. So I was going to take the pool away from Karen. And the neighborhood had no idea what was coming. 3 days after buying the pump, I made my move. It was a Saturday morning, the busiest pool day of the week. Kids splashing, parents chatting, music playing, exactly the kind of scene Karen loved to oversee like she was queen of the HOA kingdom. She was already there, of course, pacing around with her clipboard like she was inspecting troops. I watched from the sidewalk, unseen behind a row of hedges as she strutted back and forth. She had no idea what was about to happen. No idea that the entire pool, her pride, her domain, her main source of power, was running only because I allowed it. At exactly 10:17 a.m., I took out my phone, opened the contractor's remote control app for the pump system, and pressed a single button. Power off. It was instant. The waterfall feature stopped first with a sad, sputtering cough, then the jets went quiet. The pool's main system gave a low, dying groan, and within seconds everything fell completely silent. The water turned still and murky without circulation. You've never heard silence like the silence of 50 people suddenly realizing something is very, very wrong. Parents looked around in confusion. Kids poked the water with confused expressions. The lifeguard blew his whistle even though no one knew why. And Karen froze. Her face twisted into shock, then rage, then panic, all within 5 seconds. She marched over to the maintenance gate and rattled it like she expected the pump to wake up and apologize. When that didn't work, she stormed across the pool deck, demanding answers from anyone who would listen. What happened? Who shut this down? Is someone playing games? This pool is supposed to run at all times. I stepped out from behind the hedge. Hey, Karen, I called, waving casually. She spun around so fast I thought she'd snap her neck. What did you do? She hissed. I shrugged. Nothing illegal. But I did buy something. She squinted. What are you talking about? I walked right up to her, pulled out the official purchase paperwork, and held it up like a trophy. I own the pump now, I said. The one that keeps this entire pool running. The color drained from her face. She looked at the paper, then at me, then back at the silent, still water. You can't do that, she whispered. Already did? Behind her, people were packing up, leaving, and whispering. The neighborhood's beloved pool was dead, because Karen banned the wrong person. And this was only the beginning. The moment the neighborhood realized the pool wasn't reopening anytime soon, panic spread through the community like wildfire. Parents complained, kids cried. Teenagers filmed TikToks about the great pool shutdown of the year, and every single one of them blamed one person, Karen. By Monday morning, she was in full crisis mode. I woke up to an email, actually 6 emails from the HOA board, all written in the same panicked tone. We need to discuss the pump situation. We understand there may have been a misunderstanding. Please contact us immediately regarding the pool closure. I ignored all of them. By noon, Karen herself marched to my front door. She pounded on it with the fury of someone who had never been told no in her life. When I opened it, she forced a tight smile that made her look even more terrifying. We need to talk, she snapped. About the pool? I asked, pretending innocence. She pushed past me and walked into my living room without being invited. Classic Karen. You can't just turn off the community pool, she shouted. People pay HOA fees. Kids need it. Families rely on it. You banned me, I reminded her calmly. Why should I maintain something I'm not allowed to use? That was a misunderstanding, she stammered. No, I said. That was you flexing power you thought you had. Her jaw clenched. Fine. What do you want? There it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. I walked over to my coffee table, picked up the folder containing the pump's ownership documents, and handed it to her. She flipped through the pages with trembling hands. We'll buy it from you, she said. Name your price, I smiled. I already did. She frowned. What? I opened my phone and showed her the email I'd sent right after I shut off the pump. It detailed 3 simple demands. My pool privileges restored, a written apology for the unfair ban. Future HOA decisions involving me must be voted on by the full board, not just by you. Karen looked like she had swallowed a lemon whole. You expect me to apologize? She sputtered. You expect me to turn the pump back on? I countered. She threw her hands up. This is blackmail. No, I corrected. This is ownership. I bought something your HOA forgot to. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Karen looked furious, desperate, and terrified all at once, a perfect blend of emotions for someone who just realized their power wasn't as real as they believed. This isn't over, she muttered and stormed out. But deep down, we both knew. She was wrong. It was very, very over. 2 days passed after Karen's dramatic exit from my house, and the pool remained completely shut down. The water had turned cloudy, the air pumps were silent, and the entire neighborhood was buzzing with frustration. Parents were angry, kids were bored, and the HOA board members were practically begging for a solution. And the best part? Everyone knew exactly who was responsible for the chaos. Karen. 2 days passed after Karen's dramatic exit from my house, and the pool remained completely shut down. The water had turned cloudy, the air pumps were silent, and the entire neighborhood was buzzing with frustration. Parents were angry, kids were bored, and the HOA board members were practically begging for a solution. And the best part? Everyone knew exactly who was responsible for the chaos. Karen. We need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. I stepped outside and crossed my arms. About the pump? She took a deep breath. About everything. Behind her stood the entire HOA Board 3 members who looked like they'd aged a decade in the last week. One of them stepped forward and handed me a typed document with a signature line at the bottom. We've reviewed your requests, the board member said. We agree to all 3. I skimmed it, my pool privileges restored. A requirement that all future decisions involving me go through a full board vote, and at the very top, printed in bold letters. Official apology from HOA board member Karen Walters. I looked up. Karen's face was bright red. She cleared her throat and began reading from her own clipboard. I apologize, she said stiffly, for unfairly banning you from the community pool. My actions were unnecessary and inappropriate. I made decisions based on personal feelings instead of HOA guidelines. She paused, visibly swallowing her pride like a jagged stone. And I'm sorry. It was quiet for a moment, so quiet you could hear the uncomfortable breaths of every board member standing behind her. Honestly, it felt good. Not because I wanted to embarrass her, but because accountability had finally entered the neighborhood. I nodded slowly. Apology accepted. Her shoulders dropped like she'd been carrying a boulder. Then I pulled out my phone and pressed a button. The water pump hummed to life. Jets resumed bubbling. The waterfall feature restarted with a soft roar. In minutes, the pool returned from the dead like it had never shut down. From across the neighborhood, kids started cheering. Parents sighed in relief. Even the lifeguard fist-pumped the air. Karen just stood there, speechless. See? I said. All you had to do was treat people fairly. She didn't respond, but she didn't need to. The message had already been delivered and heard loud and clear. And just like that, the HOA learned who really held the power.